This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay. All right. So before I start this, if you have your phone, just make sure it's muted. Thank you. Yeah. So welcome to the Ordinance Committee meeting of January 24th. Time is 6:30. Looks like all three of us are here. And we do have a set of minutes to approve, and I believe January 5th.
Yes, 5th is correct.
So I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes. So moved.
Seconded.
Motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Public speak time today. So since we have a few people here, let me just talk about what my plan is for the order of business. So we do have the amendments to the city ordinances pay plans on here. I wasn't planning on doing a deep dive into that tonight. However, I don't want to waste anybody's time. If you came here to talk about that, I'm happy to allow you to have some time to tell us what you think, and then I'll let you know what meeting we're going to do the deep dive in. I was told that we have...
Mute.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you can mute them, can you?
Yeah.
So if you're online, can you please mute yourself? That'd be great. Thank you. So for public speak time, that's the time I'll allow you to do that, since we're not necessarily going to be talking about that as an agenda item tonight. As far as what we are going to be covering in depth, and I apologize for the miscommunication. We should have a system to mark what we're actually going to be delving into. But we do have the vacant storefront ordinance that we hopefully have all reviewed at this point, that we got back from the city solicitor. So if you're here for that, then you're in the right spot. And I know that Councilor Zaret is somewhere. He wanted to submit some new language for the safe and fair access to legally protected reproductive and gender affirming healthcare services. So we will talk about that as well. But at this time, I'd be happy to open up public speak time. If you would like to speak, just say your name and address for the record.
I'm Jeff Bagg. I'm the city planner, 49 Taft Ave in Easthampton. I, had coordinated a couple people to come in support of the planning department changes. I think if it's okay, looking at the audience over here, maybe we come back whenever the right time is. So
yeah, I wanted to make sure that we dedicated a appropriate amount of time for you to be able to come and not be distracted by other issues. So I think that's absolutely fine. If as far as timing goes, I think we could look at the next 2 weeks, trying to find a time that would work, and we can coordinate that as well. We'll just coordinate with our next meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the best use of everyone's time at this point.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Perfect. Anybody else?
But feel free to stick around.
Yeah, you absolutely. I mean, vacant storefront is honestly you might want to speak out, but the vacant storefront definitely is something that
I don't think so.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah.
They're always welcome.
Oh yeah, and so I apologize.
That's okay.
I know it's on our agenda that we weren't planning on getting into tonight just because we have some other things.
Absolutely.
But I think if you have a presentation or if you have any information you want to impart to us, I can make sure that we connect with you to make sure the timing is right. So, if obviously it's important for you to be here. So
Yeah, whatever you guys need, just let me know.
Okay.
If you are looking for additional information on anything, I'm happy to provide. I can put some stuff together. I tried to include as much as I could in the packet that we gave,
Yep.
but more than happy to provide additional things if you guys need. And then just let me know when I need to be here. And I'll...
awesome. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so
thanks.
much.
Okay. So that brings us, anybody else for public speak time? Okay. For things that are not on the agenda. So, all right.
We have one in
Oh yeah. Yep. So go ahead, Gary. You might have to unmute yourself.
I will. Okay. Hi, my name is Gary Borbo, and I'm from Ludlow. And I'm here to speak about the ordinance that would affect pregnancy resource centers such as Bethlehem House. And currently, Easthampton is a pro-choice community. If a woman wants an abortion, she will call Planned Parenthood, And if a woman wants to give birth to her baby, she knows she needs help to do this, so she'll call Bethlehem House and get the compassionate support that she needs. If you vote for this ordinance and it leads to the closing of Bethlehem House, then you have turned Easthampton into a pro-abortion community. You will be telling every woman that if you have an unexpected pregnancy, then your only answer is to call Planned Parenthood so that they can help her kill her unborn baby. You will have closed the door to the compassionate community that wanted to help her. Thank you very much.
Anybody else from our online? And be aware that we are, I will open it to the public as we go for comment later. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So, I guess what we can do is, Counselor Zarek, since to respect your time, do you want to come over here?
Oh, sure. I just didn't want to have my back to people.
Oh, right.
Last time. That was all. I was just trying to be.
Yeah, I don't know what the best way to
But whatever
deal with that is.
Or you want me to come there and I can pivot my chair?
Yeah, just
sure.
go there and then
I
pivot.
just felt bad because I didn't mean to.
Yeah. So, and I think, as I would not like to spend a huge amount of time on this tonight. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear, what the proposed new language is, maybe hear some feedback specific to the language, not random comments. I'd like to hear feedback that's specific to the language. And from there, allow us to kind of deliberate with it, because I really would like to move to the vacant storefront ordinance. So that's kind of what my timeline is for tonight. But so last time, recap. Last time we kind of discussed some ideas around new language. We talked about maybe having some new language come back to us. I did see that you were able to email like a red line version, it looked like. And I don't know if the other counselors saw that, but I think probably the best way to do it is just to talk about what changes you made. And then we can answer you can answer any questions from us. And then, I'll open it up to comments specific to that language, and then we'll move on to the next issue.
Great.
Great.
All right, thank
Feel
you,
free to
Mr.
go.
Chairman.
Yep.
Yeah, so as just to recap briefly, as people know who weren't here before, or just to reinforce it. So this newer language, the safe and fair language, kind of replaces the original language we had, which mirrored language that currently in the Commonwealth exists in Somerville, but also was similar to language that existed in both Hartford and the state of Connecticut, and then San Francisco, and also now in some other places, kind of since this conversation's begun in Pennsylvania and Washington State, that created enforcement within the city for complaints against what people felt would be deceptive advertising in terms of services of crisis pregnancy centers or limited service pregnancy centers. And I think reasonably so. I think for the most part, because of the size and kind of resources of our health department, I think that posed some issues. And so we pulled back and said, well, what are we trying to do here? So what we're trying to do here is educate the public. What we're trying to the safe portion, which we've discussed, kind of creates language on the municipal level for a recent Mass General law that was passed that basically protects people's privacy against civil or criminal reporting for pursuing gender affirming or reproductive health care, and basically just refers that to the personnel department for, basically provides them with that information. They can do whatever they want with it. There's no specific requirements as to what our director of personnel would do once they have that information. And then the fair access piece is really an education piece. It's to create or mandate dissemination of information from the city based on information that's already available at the state level. So information about reproductive and gender affirming healthcare. We talked last time about the advisories from the Attorney General, the Department of Public Health and Mass Health around crisis pregnancy centers, the state's list on mass.gov of reproductive health care centers. And so basically it just kind of creates it asks the city, which would probably be the health department, but I just use the term the city because really anyone could do it. The clerk or the mayor's office could do it if they wanted to, because they manage the website, for instance, to first of all recognize that it's within the public interest of the city to it's within their interest to support legal healthcare services that are available in the Commonwealth, as well as to shine a light on a topic that a lot of people might not have full information about. And that we want to make sure that if people are seeking certain services, that they're aware where those services are, and they're also aware of the potential pitfalls affiliated with seeking those services. So previously there was some leftover language from the original version that almost could look like the city was looking to create enforcement around this issue. And so that kind of piece about, limited service pregnancy center, blah, 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 should disseminate before the public, that almost suggests that the city actually has then some role in enforcement. And I wanted to remove that because that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish here is educating the public and making this information available and visible, and directing people, if they do have complaints, to complain through certified channels, verified channels through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So initially there's that whole paragraph under 6-23.4, which was left over. And I just crossed that all out because I don't think it was accomplishing what we were trying to do here. And so I added new language in that's kind of like a draft because, ultimately I would hope that the solicitor would clean this up. But do you want me to just read that? Or?
Yeah, let's read it.
Okay, so the city acknowledges that access to safe, legal, and transparent reproductive and gender affirming care is within the interest of the municipality regarding informed access to public health. The city shall make available in writing or via electronic communications Massachusetts state information relevant to access to reproductive and gender affirming health care, to include information from the Commonwealth pertaining to limited service / crisis pregnancy centers. The city shall provide information that creates transparency and fair access to legal reproductive health care and gender affirming services within the Commonwealth. This shall include information provided from the Commonwealth pertaining to access to such services and may include advisories, notices, or other general information pertaining to reproductive and gender affirming health care. The city shall direct the public in matters of deceptive advertising in regard to reproductive health care to the appropriate department of the Commonwealth in section 6-23.5.1. And the last paragraph I think is important because I think it was brought up reasonably so that some of the public that's come to our meetings have had concerns about the concept of what's considered deceptive advertising. And so within the realm of reproductive health care, and I feel that anyone should feel empowered to follow the channels set forth by the Attorney General and fill any complaints that they feel are relevant. But I feel that this also still fulfills the mission of addressing or respecting the concerns that have been handed down to us from the Commonwealth, which is these health advisories, which that was pretty much it. I crossed out some language I thought was either repetitive or just kind of too focused further on. There's a few other things I would consider removing. I don't think that the city needs to go through a whole gestalt about if they want to properly inform the public as to how to file complaints with the Attorney General, make sure that's both in print or digitally available, and direct them to that. I think that's enough. I don't think that we necessarily need to go then through this whole gestalt of then attaching a copy of the ordinance and sending it with that. I think that's kind of almost repetitive and sort of unnecessary. So I think 6-23.5.1, I think C. I don't know if that's necessary or maybe some modified, with the exception that they could just attach a letter saying that a member of the public asked, maybe we're directed and attached is a copy of their complaint. So
that's another one that
yeah, I can modify that a little bit. So, but again, I want to just be clear that a lot of this is in response to, all of this is disseminating information from the Commonwealth. None of this is our own opinions or our own, really language. It's really just facilitating on a local level, connecting to information that's already readily available that a lot of people don't know about.
And this last paragraph of 623.4 means that if someone got deceptive information at any reproductive health care facility, that they could potentially bring that to the health department.
Yeah, that's what they felt that. And again, this is about advertising. It's not about messaging.
Right.
If they felt that they were misled about the services that were provided by some sort of reproductive health care center, that they could find out the health department should disseminate that information about what the complaint process is, and they could send something to the state, just like they could do if this didn't exist. Except this creates visibility and transparency, because a lot of people don't know about some of these topics.
Yeah. Either of the counselors have any questions? Councilor Zarek?
No, I don't think so. I'm fine with C being in there under the reporting category. If you wanted to leave it, if you want to strike it, that's fine with me as well. Either way, I don't see it being that repetitive of a process. Everything else looks perfectly fine to me. Like I said at the last meeting, there's been some substantial changes. I think this is fair, it's equitable, and it addresses, I think, everybody's concerns while also staying true to the original intent of the ordinance. So, looks good to me.
Thank you.
And so, before I open it up to the public, I think I'd like to, since this is kind of the first time we're seeing this, I'd like to sit down with the language. And there's just a couple. Do I have an editable version of this? I mean, if I don't, I'm sure. Just a couple. Yeah. Like just a couple wordsmithing things.
Absolutely.
That maybe we can work out before we take a vote on it, and because then once we take a vote on it, then it would have to be approved to go to the attorney, and then it would have to come back, similar to the vacant storefront ordinance. So as long as you're okay with that, we'll extend this to give us time. We'll extend this to another meeting where obviously we'll invite you back, and then take a look at because I think I think what Councilor Riley said is true. This seems to be a good kind of, without losing the integrity of the idea that there's real advisories being issued by the state, and that there are real people complaining about this across the Commonwealth, and that's not imagined. That this basically acknowledges that, but takes away the idea of targeting any specific entity, especially within the city. Honestly, as far as the Bethlehem House goes, you would be hard pressed to have this apply in any way to the Bethlehem House at all.
Yes.
And in fact, I think that if you look at the advertising, which would be the website, because I think that's the only advertising that exists for the Bethlehem House, it already is excluded from anything stated here.
Right.
So
both the definitions within the ordinance and right now, if any resident felt so empowered, they can file a complaint without the existence of this.
Sure.
This just creates education for people and mandates. Because the health department right now could probably create a policy, except for the fact that another health director can come along and just say, no, we don't want to do that. So, just to that this does not in any way, would not in any way affect the operations of of anything that's within our city.
Yep.
Okay.
Fair enough. So any other comments from the councilors before we open up to the public? Okay.
Actually,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
the only thing I would say too is that in terms of what you were recommending, which I appreciate, because I agree the wording's, I give it a B. And there's like some, said I would defer to some of your experience too in writing ordinances. I would just that would give me some time to write a brief to kind of explaining kind of the intention of this, because I know a lot of times if it gets to the solicitor, they can understand what we're trying to do, and a lot of times they may recommend wording and things like that also. Yeah. So
perfect. Okay, so let's open it up to the public. Does anybody have any thoughts on the new wording or any of the previous wording in the ordinance? And let's try to keep it specific to information that we can use to try to craft this ordinance. Ideally, feedback on what's specifically in here would be the most helpful. So just make sure you state your name and address for the record. So
Pam Henry. So my question is, last time when we met, I thought that you were going to have a draft that the lawyer had already looked at for this meeting. So that draft that was stated last time. So I'm pretty sure of that. So this draft is just something that is gonna go to the lawyer.
So just to be clear, as far as the process here, until we vote as a committee to approve the language, it's not gonna, unless we decide to do it separately from that, but that's the way I would like to do it now, is for us to agree to the language and then say, yes, we would like to send it to the city solicitor. It's not gonna get sent to the solicitor until we say that we're ready to send it to the solicitor, which we have, because we were waiting for this updated wording. And once it goes to the solicitor, it's up to the president and the mayor to pay for that, to approve that. And then we would get the feedback back into committee where we would process that. And then we'd take another vote to send it to the full council. And at that point, there would be, because it's an ordinance, there would be a public hearing as well. So that's the process. But
so it's been changed since the last time we were here.
Yeah.
So can we get a copy of the new change now? Is my question.
I imagine that we could probably send it somehow, but yes, I'd say yes. Yeah.
Okay, because I would like to request that we get a copy of that. Like either this evening, just to print out, no big deal, or if you want to mail it, or I could come back and pick it up at the town hall. I definitely would like a written copy of that.
It will be easier if you can email.
Yeah, email would be ideal, the easiest way.
And email?
Yeah. Councilor Zare?
Well, I'll apologize for any misunderstanding, but what I recall the conversation was last time was there was a request from the public for a new version, and what was stated was that the best thing would be for the public to wait until the solicitors reviewed it, and that would be the version we would share. I don't recall any promise that would be available today, just that someone asked can we see a version of the new language beforehand? And I think the comment that was made was, what would be best is you wait till the solicitor actually reviewed it and we had kind of some finalized. So I don't have a problem with sharing this, but I think that was what I had heard last time, just to clarify that.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I just want to clarify something, and thank you that you say it. First, yes, we can share the document, including the original one, because it's public. One is part of the agenda. It's right there.
Yep.
So I'm gonna talk, if you allow me to do about the process.
Yes.
So that way they can understand.
Yeah.
So Councilor Sarah present a draft with the ordinance, right?
Right.
We send it to this committee, and this committee start working on it. And the process will change. That's why from the original one, now we have a different version from Councilor Sarah. It is going to be addressed to about the same issues, but maybe the language in the ordinance is different. So you can have both. You can have the original one that he presented a few months ago, I don't remember exactly, and you can have the latest version, the he's working on that today.
Right.
So if you pass us your email, probably Councilor Sutter will send you both.
Mhm.
And you can have both.
Perfect.
But that doesn't mean that at the end of the next meeting, we'll change again, because probably Councilor Peak or Councilor Riley will make some changes. So, but definitely you can have both. But
Well, I have a lot of people asking me, and I'm like, I can't remember all that.
yeah,
So
for the
I'm like,
process,
for me, it really helps. to have
Absolutely.
yes, no,
The
definitely.
towns,
Thank you.
because I know a lot of people in town, and they're asking me a lot of questions. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
No, it's fine. I think that we can
That was
arrange
a lot of
that.
information too.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to be opaque. I also want you to end up with ultimately, and I apologize if I'm speaking for your committee, but if this goes.
Yeah,
to
Rich,
a
we
full
see you.
council, I don't want.
Just 1 second.
I don't want you to have a version that's not really the version that we all been talking about, but.
Right, but
I'm happy-
people are asking me what goes on in meetings, what are they,
Yeah.
what are they proposing, and I have nothing.
I'll share with you whatever you want.
It would be very, have something in writing.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Just your email address.
Yep. And so we'll deal with that after,
Yeah.
and that's fine. So,
Yes,
if,
just to.
and don't forget your name and address for the record.
Sandy Zeminski, South Hadley. Just a segue to what she had said. So the original is not online on the website?
Oh, it should be.
Should be.
Oh,
It should be.
How do you find that?
It should be in the minutes or the agenda for the meeting submitted.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in the minutes, or it's in the agenda, or I believe there's another section on the website, and Jeff knows, right?
I think it's the agenda.
It's the agenda.
Knowing which one.
Yeah, but it's because it's different than our zoning, which go into that folder. That's its own folder.
I will take a look now.
Yeah, we don't have our own folder. We're not that fancy yet.
So you go online and you look for the agenda?
Yep.
So it's more specific. because
ordinance.
The agenda's, I see just what your program is for tonight,
Right.
but there's another section that you go on to?
You have to look for this full city council agenda.
The full city council agenda. So it's
City Council. agenda.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I keep talking on track.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I think, I might be wrong, but I think because of the format that the agendas are in, if you do a search for use pregnancy, I think you'll get that agenda. I might be wrong though.
Yeah, I think because they are searchable, they're PDFs.
Yeah.
So, so if you go on the city website and you look at city council agendas, you might even be able to search from it right from there.
Now, this new
this
version is not.
No, it's all.
So this version is new to this meeting today. Because it literally just got sent to
Right,
us.
you're constantly
Because we're-
reviewing and adjusting this.
We're taking feedback that we get and try to adjust it, and
You're correct. If you search just that word, you're gonna get it.
yeah, and so you will. Yep.
So if Pamela gives
Well, I'd rather,
email
I can do that stuff really good, so that's why I'm asking, maybe you can do a printout, and I've got it.
I get it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so Omar does have it, and he said he'd be happy to send it to you right after we're done here.
Perfect.
And so does anybody else that's here have anything to say, or can I open it up to?
I just have one other question.
Yeah.
This is a lot of the health advisories that comes from the state that you have in this ordinance. And you revised it from others and eliminated the fine and some of the criminal intent and so forth. Should every state and city locally every city and town be doing this?
So I would say the answer to that question is it depends on who's in that city and town and what their threshold is for doing the work. Right now, since there isn't and really, if someone proposes it, then in any city or town, it could potentially happen. But, because it's so mild in nature, it's like if the state does something eventually, it will probably have a little bit more teeth to it. This is more of point someone in the right direction, help educate. It doesn't really have a ton of, there's no enforcement. There's zero enforcement to this ordinance. And so, if other cities and towns are so inclined to do it, then they can, or not. Yeah.
Query that.
I'm sorry, you were talking.
Yeah, sure. So, all right, let's open it up to online. Who do we have here? Looks like Rich.
There you go.
No, muted.
Again.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to
Can you
talk.
just state your name and address for the record for me, please?
Yes, my name is Dick Pasquini, 17 Ridgeview Center in Ludlow, Mass. And I'm on the board of directors at Bethlehem House. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. That information is online. We just looked at it this evening, okay? So Pam, we can get you a copy or you can go online and get it yourself. I don't know if this board was aware, but we had an attack on Bethlehem House. People with light bulbs with paint in them threw it at Bethlehem House and smeared red paint up and down the side of the building. Scared everyone. Now, all the women that volunteer that go there are afraid. The doors are locked. We have a security system. The clients that come up to the door hear this noise that says you're on camera. It's absolutely ridiculous. This should not have happened. I could see if something in Easthampton was there that you'd want to protect the women that are coming, but all of these women that are coming have already made a decision that they want their child and they're looking for help. And why this guy is doing this is beyond. If you had a clinic in Easthampton that was doing this, I could understand it. So I'm just speaking out and saying, please vote this down. Just give us peace so we can do the job that we're supposed to be doing, helping these women that are coming there who want their babies. Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the time to talk. And I know I'm off the subject, but I'm very emotional when it comes to something like this. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? And I am going to ask that if we can keep the comments as close to the ordinance as possible, that would be ideal. Thanks. Okay. Nobody else? Okay. So, like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our next topic. And what we'll do for our next meeting is I think the three of us individually can take a look at what we think of the new wording, and then we can come back with ideas. I'll do a little wordsmithing, and then, we'll go from there. So it'll probably be at our next meeting, even though there's a chance it might be two meetings, because we have a pay plan ordinance that we have to deal with, and that's really important. So I might just do a specific meeting for that and then put this on the agenda for the following meeting. And so, yeah. Any questions? All right, good. All right, so we're gonna, one.
The gentleman who just spoke, he said it was online, as you have said.
Yes.
Now, what Councilman has in the computer changed, is that online also?
That is not online yet, so that's what we'll coordinate. Yeah, and if Omar gets your email, then we'll send that to you. Or somebody's email.
She wants to email.
And so, yeah, and we'll do that after. And I would love if my EDIC member and my city planner would come to the table. And someone can, let me see if I can make some space for that, because I would love to be able to see.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next topic, which is our vacant property ordinance. And Councilor Peak.
So before we get started on this, I just want to say one thing, which is just for the benefit of everyone involved. Some of you probably I've discussed the fact that I've been recently working a little bit with a group of artists in the region to potentially get some sort of performing arts space going. This has nothing to do with my council life, but it's just a volunteer project I've been working on a little bit. It's occurred to me that some of the prospective properties we've looked at may be affected by this ordinance, and that it's something I'm doing on the side. I have some concerns that my participation in this, at least as a voting member, could be perceived as a conflict of interest, depending on how other events in my life go. I will participate in the meeting just in terms of offering thoughts on wording and whatnot, but when it comes to voting, I will abstain. And if that leads to a tie, then I suppose President Gomez has the power to break that tie. I just wanted to say that now, just so that we're all clear on, I still intend to participate, but probably won't be voting, not because I have a problem with this.
And I appreciate the disclosure. I think that, since we did start working on this significantly before you had the idea to
long before I started working on this.
I think that dispels a lot, that alleviates any concern I have of you participating in the process, since you have been participating in the process since long before you decided to look for a performance venue. And I'll leave the voting up to you and however you feel comfortable. But I do want to say, where we did end off last time was we did get the revised language from the city solicitor, who basically went through and changed some of the legal terms, some of the wording, and really ended up with almost an identical in spirit document that we had proposed, which was a little bit different from the original document that was originally submitted to us, as that, we added and increased the cost of registration,
which we applaud.
And I think we are very happy to have your support. I just want to remind people the annual registration for the first year vacancy is $500, and it's due of the time of registration of the vacant property. $750 will be assessed to the second year the property is vacant, and a fee of $1,000 will be due the third and subsequent year the property is vacant. So it's a progressive scale that is basically designed to encourage people to use the properties that are vacant, which is the whole point. And failure to register the property, and none of this was changed by the attorney, it would be subject to a $100 per day fine. Then all of these things can be waived, and the waiver process really didn't get changed in here from the city solicitor. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just, now that the whole committee has been able to look at the changes, to see what your thoughts are, and then kind of move, because I think that if we can agree to what the solicitor put in the final document, I feel like we could potentially vote this out and bring it to the full council. So I would love to just hear any thoughts that either Councilor Riley or Councilor Peak. Councilor Peak.
I think that the changes that are made are sensible. I do think just one thing that I always say is, once you actually accept all the changes in a track change document, it's always worth it to go through again, because just somehow grammar stuff, there's always like some sentences that you thought you didn't need that word, and then you definitely do. And I definitely saw a number of those reading through this. I'm not going to waste the committee's time on that. Those sorts of just like, this sentence needs to be cleaned up. When it's abundantly clear what the purpose of the sentence is, but just is going to need a review before it goes public.
Absolutely. And I think the third document, which I believe it's called final version, dated 11/23/22, I believe that got cleaned up in that part of the, so some of those things did get cleaned up, as far as I can tell. Okay. The only thing that really is on that, and do you all have copies of this?
No,
Okay. How about?
But don't take my word for it.
No. Well, I feel like generally when I sent these, I sent them to everybody, but this one, since it was from the solicitor, I might not have. So just let me make sure that I get it to everybody because.
Do you want me to do this?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Okay.
I have one in an email from 11/23. Is that the one that the attorney had weighed in on? No.
There's one called, it has 3 documents. One is, vacant building, changes accepted. And one is red line. And then the one that we sent was, so that would have been on 11/23, I believe. So it's called, the one I'm using right now is vacant building ordinance changes accepted.
Yeah. Got it.
I believe Council Peak is sending it anyway. Councilor Riley, did you have any thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, look, sometimes I get my eyeballs go a little crazy when I see all the, the red line stuff.
Yeah.
I felt that the final looked perfectly fine. I will say that I think that Councilor Peak has a much more highly trained eye for this type of stuff than I do. So, I think that whatever recommendations he comes up with, I'm sure will be more than acceptable. I wish that I had a better answer for this. I'm still very new to the process.
That's fine.
Yeah, but it looked perfectly fine to me.
So, before I open it to other people, I just want to, so there is, if you look at the changes accepted document, which is what incorporates all the red line changes, there are places where, and really this is the biggest thing before we send it out that we need to do is insert department. I don't know if you all noticed that, but yes. So for example, the monies raised by the fees set forth in this ordinance will be used to provide an online registry of vacant properties in Easthampton, which shall be maintained and updated by the insert department. And what we had come up with last time when we had the building commissioner here was that we felt that that made sense to have this live. And it would also, since we state in the ordinance that the monies raised by the fees set forth in this ordinance will be used to help provide for the administration of this, I think that takes a little bit of the burden off of at least, and I felt like the building commissioner felt okay with that. Is that, did you all feel like that was
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good. So, so for this first one, which is in the, section 1, insert department would be, updated by the building commissioner or their designee. And then, so there's more of those. And I just want to kind of like make sure that we fill in all those blanks before we get too far. Because, so let me bring you to the next one, section 3, registration. D, the city may exempt an owner from the provisions of this ordinance upon the presentation of a clear and convincing evidence to the insert entity that the existence of the vacant building under their ownership does not violate the purpose or intent of this ordinance. I would say since the building commissioner is the enforcement agent, that it would make sense again there to have the building commissioner be that entity. Does that sound reasonable? If you have something to say, I will call on you right now. Yes, please.
Did we have a conversation that included building commissioner or fire department? Or is that basically that could be considered if the building commissioner or their in-department designee was not available, the fire department could make that determination?
I think
this is not that place.
So we did talk about the fire department and the police department. That was in relation to the condemned piece, like when we found a condemned building that was like dangerous.
Okay.
That it could be the police department, the fire department, or the building commissioner, because you might need to act immediately.
So that was on the side of the inspection.
That was on the inspection piece. So this piece would still, since this is kind of like, oh, we're exempt from this because of A, B, or C, the person that you would go to would be the building commissioner. Is that?
Yeah. One quick note. So that's section D that you're talking about.
Yeah, section D.
And then, didn't bring my laptop, so I'm scrolling down.
Sorry.
I had just seen another reference to the waiver.
Yes.
For paragraph B. Order to apply for a waiver of the annual registration permit with time of the inspection and promulgated by
Yep.
insert department.
Yep, and then, I thought there was another section, let me find it. There was another section that talked about the city planner and building commissioner being involved in reviewing a waiver request.
Oh.
I guess it's
Is it E?
E, yes. Just because I think there was a part of this where we roll in the idea of someone installing public art as one opportunity for the waiver.
Right.
So that was the discussion I had in my notes, is just that the planning department was on board to help support the building department in any way we can.
Okay.
And I think it came up in terms of some kind of spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something where they kind of specifically said, we'll need some help starting that. And then maybe the waiver requests.
The waiver requests in the spreadsheet, I think,
Yeah.
were the two areas that
Right.
we
So
put that in.
if a little bit later, it rolls in the planning department, in that first section, it's just the building inspector. So
Right.
I don't know if those two should be
So
aligned with each other.
Oh, that does, so related. So the waiver piece, that is for the annual registration permit or failure to pay waiver. So that's E, waivers for issues related to the improvement for the future reuse of the vacant building shall be reviewed by, because we knew that there'd be, site plan approval stuff, special permit stuff. If they're, so that's why we wanted to build in the planning department, but it's, does E sound reasonable to you? Does that sound like something that makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So section 4E.
Section 4E.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So who owns the form for the waiver itself?
The form for the waiver itself would be the building commissioner, building department. And we talked about, it seemed like once we laid it all out that BJ felt comfortable with those responsibilities.
That was the sense I had as well.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find, Jeff, if you see the other part with okay, so it's inspections is another place that we added. So for inspections, we said building commissioner, police chief, fire chief, and the health director or their designee shall have the authority to periodically inspect, because especially if it relates to a condemned building, we felt that as many people that would have knowledge of those workings would be appropriate to be able to conduct an inspection or to call for an inspection.
And then in paragraph B of that section,
With the fees.
It's the most vague reference to a fee.
It is, because I think each one of those departments would levy their own fee that would be within their internal structure.
So then does that sentence make sense if the amount is established by the city council?
Oh, that doesn't make sense, does it? Because I mean, like if the fire department's conducting an inspection, they usually will charge a fee for that inspection, a commercial inspection. And we don't set that fee. No, so we might need to now, unless we just want to say any of these fees and we set a fee structure for that. And so we would say, regardless of who does the inspection, here's the fee, which we can do.
Because otherwise you're not saying necessarily who is going to be conducting this inspection. And if that differs by department, people would be vying for it. Well, I want the cheapest.
Exactly. So I think, all of those, so the police chief, building commissioner, fire chief, and health director or their designees have the authority to periodically inspect. I think a formal inspection would have to be the building commissioner, and we could set the fee for that within the ordinance. And so we just need to make a note that we just need to set that fee. which is, I think, probably just the smartest thing. So can I even make a note on this? I don't even know. I don't think I can. Thomas or Brad, can you make a note of that? Because I feel like that's an important piece.
So let's summarize it in the most basic.
For section 6B,
Yep.
need to explore setting a fee. And that is going to be, I think, since we'll have the building commissioner probably doing most of those inspections, unless it's like an emergency, we'll do that in consultation with the building commissioner and see what they think is a fair fee, and then we can. Okay. And then brings us to section 7, which is an insert payee. So in the event that a vacant building has been condemned in accordance with MGL 143, section 9, or a like statute, such vacant building shall, in addition to the annual registration fee, incur a condemned building fee of $500 per year, payable to I think the building department would make the most sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
no, please.
There are certain, not every department in the city actually has like collection capacities. So I'm wondering, does the building department normally collect fees on their own? Or,
Yes.
Okay, they go straight to the bill. No, they don't go to like the collector. Or whatever.
No, because it would be, if you're paying for a permit, you make that check directly to the
To the
building.
building.
department.
Then yes, that makes the most sense.
Yeah. Jeff.
Just, I guess, in full disclosure, there may be a little investigation that should happen, which is if the building department fees go into the general fund, there may need to be a discussion about setting up an account to which these funds go to the building department and stay there.
Yes.
In fact,
So
yeah.
it's a revolving account or some other account. It's a little outside of my area, but I know just enough to know that I think all the building permit fees go into the general fund.
General fund.
So then could we buy it as part of this ordinance, also just create a fund?
We'd have to, I
Or
think
that
we'd
would
have to
go to
suggest it. We'd have to go to finance, but I don't think, it's not super complicated. It's, yes.
It's not complicated, and Jeff, I'm at the very tippy toe of my knowledge too. I know in other departments, we have looked at creating fee accounts and revolving accounts. And there's a specific way that they are created, and it depends on the type of fee, and then connected to revolving. So for instance, fire collects fees, but the fees go into general fund. Parks fees go into a revolving account that support the park.
Right.
And I don't know the distinction. I mean, I just know that the building and health and licensing set their own fees, but they're all processed in different ways.
Right. So, it seems like, if we wanted those fees to stay in the department to help with the enforcement of this, then maybe a revolving fund would make the most sense. Sounds like a question for Hadel.
Yeah, I would defer to Hadel.
Okay. And so, and I think that we can kind of spearhead that. As long as nobody has any issues with them having a revolving fund that they can use to kind of support the operations around this ordinance.
I would just expect then similar requests from every other department, which basically all of them collect things,
Yeah.
including fire, and it's not great. Again, it's not, some funds are discouraged, if not outright prohibited by the state because of really other cities doing all sorts of things. And I just put it out there to think about, but Hadel, ultimately Hadel knows how, Hadel will determine how we treat that money in accordance to the law and
Right.
what we've done in the past.
Okay, that's good information. So, and I think that does it as far as the things that we needed to make sure that we took care of beyond what the solicitor had sent back to us. Those were kind of the outstanding pieces. Was us deciding who was going to, enforce, or who was going to be the payee. Those are, and I think that does make a difference. The fee structure, I think, is going to be important. If we want to set it in conjunction with BJ, that is going to be outside of the realm of this specific wording, but I think it's something that we can do. And then looking at what kind of options there are for that department to collect these fees is the second piece. But other than that, I mean, to me, this looks like it could be a really good tool that could potentially, have an impact on some of the stagnation that's happening in our downtown.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to throw it out to any final comments, any thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think this is how law works, but do we have to say anything about anything at all, whether or not this has any play retroactively?
So we can't ex post facto.
Right. Okay.
So
we don't have to say anything about it.
Right. I don't even know if that's the right word. But it sounds like it would be, right?
So
Doesn't it?
when it's voted on, at the point at which the building commissioner and their department feels like they can move forward, that's day zero.
Yeah, that would be day zero. And if we felt it necessary, we could give, a buffer in order for them to educate building owners and allow us a little bit of time for education. And so, for example, plastics, we did a year. Don't think we would need to do a year, maybe 3 months or, something to that nature, which would allow for people to learn about this. People be like, oh, this is not a surprise. You're not trying to pull the wool over us. But so I think that that is going, and plus also allow the building department to kind of get themselves set up in order to be successful.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty typical thing that we would do.
And just on implementation, if you're not jumping to that, I have notes from last time, something about an initial letter indicating the new ordinance, like plain English explanation, including benefits of potentially having you be on the list so that people know that the real estate is potentially available. And I seem to recall that we talked about then sending a letter identifying that a property meets the definition of vacant, and then sending a letter as that would be the first day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, to the owners that are potentially.
So now you have 90 days.
Yes, exactly. So as long as a general outline of how we might actually implement it, that was
absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's great. Any other thoughts? Ordinance subcommittee?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's great. And so we've already had this reviewed by the attorney. So if what I can do is I can fill in those blanks, and I'll send 2 emails. So one email would be to Hadel asking about an account for the fees for this, and what would be legal, what would make sense. And the second email would be to BJ around what is a reasonable fee for a inspection under the auspices of this ordinance. So those are the basically 2 pieces of homework before we vote as the full council. I think those 2 things should be squared away. But that being said, I feel like this is in a pretty good place to send to the full council and to at least come up with a date for a public hearing, because I think that those 2 things can happen in a relatively short period of time, at least getting that information.
Okay. So we can do both simultaneously.
We can do both simultaneously, because there is a lag between, we can't set this until our next meeting, which is next week, and then probably won't set the public hearing for another, skip a meeting and put it 2 meetings out. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Any other comments or thoughts before I entertain a motion? All right. Anybody want to?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Brad, it looks like it's me and you. Do you want to?
Yes. So
just to send to the full council.
Yes, I move to send new language Excuse me, let me just make sure I'm in the right section here. So I move to send to the full council the vacant storefront ordinance pending solicitor review.
Okay. I will second that, even though we have solicitor review, but I'll second it anyway.
Oh, I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Yes.
It's fine. So we have a motion to send this vacant building ordinance to the full council. All those in favor? Aye. So it passes 2-0. We have an 2 abstention.
2-0.
Great. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. Thanks for the genesis of this.
Got it.
Yes. And President Gomez.
Do you want to make a motion from this committee to schedule a public, to recommend a public hearing at the full council?
Well, I think if we send it
Or
to
you want to wait until?
It's if we send it to the full council, it's implicit that we will set a public hearing.
Just want to be sure.
Yeah, I think
That
so.
we on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. I think that we're good. You can make a motion to adjourn if you want.
I will do that. I moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
See
We
you,
are done.
Connie.
Thank you.
Bye. This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.